Anchorage, Alaska, the largest city in the 49th state and the headquarters of the Alaska Railroad, a 470-mile Class II railroad running from Seward in the south to Fairbanks in the north. Join me in this two-part video series where I'll be railfanning the railroad over a period of 5 days, covering the region of the main line from Portage around milepost 65 to Wasilla around milepost 160, covering about every single operation that I could get over that 5-day period. And now, let's kick this trip off with the first train that I got upon arriving into Alaska. The night before, I got word that Alaska 3001 would be leading the Whittier Freight northbound in Anchorage, due in around 5 a.m. And what's special about 3001 is that it is one of 3 remaining GP40s in the black and gold scheme, as delivered from the 1970s. So I set out at 3:30 a.m. and drove south along the Kenai subdivision and made it down to Beluga Point around milepost 95.2 when we ran into train 120 coming north from Whittier. With only one direction to go but north, we gave chase and followed the train up to milepost 102.9 just as the Seward Highway began to pull away from the tracks, where we got a running speed shot of the train doing about 40 miles an hour. With the highway speed limit staying favorable to leapfrog the train one last time, we were able to beat the Whittier Freight to CP 1107, where a about 5-mile stretch of double track singles up and the railroad speed limit drops down to about 25 miles per hour. Successful chase of the Whittier freight train in the books, I received word that the Fairbanks freight train coming south was in the picture and running late this morning. So, with that information in mind, we shot up to Wasilla along the central subdivision at milepost 159 and caught train 130 coming south with 4 SD70 Max up front. to return to Anchorage anyways, as that was where our hotel was and breakfast was awaiting, we followed this train southbound from Wasilla down towards Anchorage. Our next spot being on the south side of town, as speed limits for the railroad are about 25 miles an hour through the area. The general speed limit for freight increasing to 50 to 55 miles per hour south of this spot, we were only able to catch the train one more time at the north end of Eklutna Siding, where they were coming out of a 25 crossing the Nick River. The SD70s were notching up right in front of us here, and it made quite the show as the train got back up to speed. Continuing our trek back south, we are now at the north end of Birchwood Siding at milepost 136.2 for the Denali Star. This train is the flagship of the Alaska Railroad and runs daily in each direction between Anchorage and Fairbanks from early May to late September every summer. Moving south to milepost 133.1 at Beach Lake Road, we catch the Healy Explorer, which is one of the privately contracted cruise trains that run throughout the summer season. With our visit being only 2 days after the start of the summer season, there were a couple of trains that we thought would be running by the time we went in, ended up not running due to a late melting snowpack. Thus, the railroad was pretty much dead for the rest of the day until the evening, when the southbound Denali Star came down from Fairbanks, Denali, and Wasilla, and they were actually running a little late today and had to do a crew change at Eklutna Village Road, where we started a short chase heading back down towards Anchorage. As you can see from the trains that we've caught so far on this trip, the Alaska Railroad uses SD70 Max as their primary mode of power, and specifically within these SD70 Max, they have a subfleet that are specifically used for passenger service, with flared radiators and head-end power. Another distinguishing feature is that they are in the 4300 series instead of the 4000s for the general freight Max. After the Denali Star arrived in Anchorage, we decided to explore around the Anchorage yard area, as there were a few public roads that weaved in and out of the yard trackage. The first thing we found was a yard job with another of the black and gold GP40s and a bold Alaska title GP38. Unfortunately, this pair just idled for the entire time that we were there, and we weren't able to catch any true switching with these engines. The next movement that we were able to see was one of the passenger SD70 Max pulling down with a consist known as the cruise train, which is a train set that'll run on specific days of the week when cruise ships are in the ports of either Whittier and Seward, and bring passengers up from either of those ports to various destinations along the railroad. And that would wrap up our first day on the Alaska Railroad. And on the next morning, we were back out around downtown Anchorage, catching the northbound Denali Star leave on its next 12-hour trip to Fairbanks. Non-train related plans for the majority of the day, but by the evening we were back out along the main line up by Beach Lake Road for the southbound Denali Star and the northbound Fairbanks Freight. When the Fairbanks freight train runs during the summer season, it's a pretty safe bet to assume that it'll show up about an hour after the southbound Denali Star passes this location at Beach Lake Road, and tonight was no exception, with train 130 showing up right around 9:15. And since this was the first Fairbanks freight after the Whittier trains ran, this was long and heavy by Alaska Railroad standards. 3 SD70 Max up front, 2 SD70 Max mid-DPU, and a total train length of about 6,500 feet. original plan was to chase the Fairbanks freight up to Wasilla, but then we got word of a yard job coming out with 2 GP38s heading to Birchwood. So we stuck around and caught that train passing by to end our evening. After the yard job cleared Beach Lake Road, we went back south to the hotel to get some rest and gear up for the next day of train watching, which happened to be a Saturday, the busiest day for passenger operations on the railroad. This is because usually there is at least one cruise ship in Seward or Whittier, or sometimes a ship in both ports, and it results in a lot of extra trains carrying cruise passengers to and from their land tour destinations. Sure enough, the next morning, we're out at Beach Lake Road again, as it's a pretty easy spot to get to, and you still have to drive 15 miles north of Anchorage to get there. But we're starting off with the traditional train, the Denali Star. Now, when the Fairbanks freight trains run, they always run in pairs, with one train coming north out of Anchorage overnight and one train coming south out of Fairbanks overnight. But normally the southbound train gets in usually around 7 a.m. So to have this southbound Fairbanks freight make a surprise appearance around 9 a.m. today was a very nice bonus. With the regular morning action out of the way, we're now able to see some of the more unique trains that ran on this first Saturday of the summer season. We're at milepost 109.4 now, just south of downtown Anchorage, and we're catching the southbound Glacier Discovery train to depart towards Whittier. This train runs daily during the summer and takes passengers on an all-day excursion to Girdwood, Portage, Whittier, and Grandview. We'll see more of this train in Volume 2 of this Railfan series. heading south and some of our other subject trains heading north, we decided to break off from the Glacier Discovery train and shoot up to Wasilla, where we intercepted the northbound McKinley Explorer, which runs with that cruise train consist we saw a few days ago at Anchorage Yard. The McKinley Explorer is a train that is specifically designed for cruise passengers and will start its day in Seward and run to wherever the ship happens to be in port that day. If it's in Seward, it'll pick its passengers directly up from its starting point, or it will deadhead to Whittier and pick up passengers from there. After that, the train will run north to an area just south of Talkeetna, where it will swap its outgoing cruise passengers for its incoming cruise passengers, and then return south to the ship. We stayed in Wasilla after the McKinley Explorer passed through, and we now find ourselves set up at the Engine 557 Restoration House, where a hard-working group of volunteers are working to bring this 280 steam engine back into service on the Alaska Railroad. But for now, we have our next train coming, and this one, while similar to the McKinley Explorer, is called the Denali Explorer and runs with a slightly different route profile. This one picks up passengers in Whittier only and runs express all the way up to Denali National Park. And similar to the McKinley Explorer, it will have a train that runs south to the cruise ship as well, but it runs with 2 train sets instead of 1. After the Denali Explorer passed, we were invited into the engine house to see how much work was going on with the 557 thus far. The project is estimated to be completed in about 2025, and I'm really excited to plan a trip to come back to see this engine in operation, as the guys here have done an amazing job thus far. After the tour, we took the opportunity and lull in the train action to grab some lunch, and then by the time we got back down to Anchorage to take care of some other activities planned for the trip, the southbound Denali Explorer was coming through town, so we set up at a general spot close to where our hotel was just to get the train rolling by. And with that, Volume 1 of my Alaska Railroad Railfan series comes to a close. I hope you've enjoyed all the action thus far, and be on the lookout for Volume 2, as I have some great trains to show you in the second half of this series. Thanks for watching, and I'll see ya in the next video. I don't know if this is the footage I'm going to use for like the intro of this series, but I'm just taking some footage now.
Hey, Bob, if you're watching this on YouTube, hi, it's me from Alaska.